the way in which they decided to do that was what I would kind of call this kind of like DAO attack, right? And so now I'll kind of get into why we decided to do this.
Which crypto Twitter recently destroyed you on, saying that you should be using your 100 million to buy back the token.
But frankly, I don't know if you could have came in with a proposal high enough based on the intertwined interest that you're describing.
Welcome back to the Rollup. We are your hosts. I'm Andy.
I'm Robbie, and this is your home to learn from the biggest guests, the brightest minds at the tip of innovation.
Our goal is to help spread the collective knowledge of everyone in our community.
We are breaking crypto out of its echo chamber and taking it to the real world.
Robinson, welcome to the show, man. Appreciate you joining us today. I think you may have a different story than the one that Rob just laid out. So no better place to start than let's hear it. Like, how are you doing? How's the last couple of days been? And would love to hear your side of the story, man.
What's up, guys? Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about the Stargate saga. So for context for the listeners, I think this is definitely the first time I've spoken about things publicly since kind of the outcome of the DAO. So my intentions here, I think it's important to kind of outline those. Is I guess my number one goal, or one of my goals is, I don't want to I'm not here to slander the competition or anything like that. Quite the contrary. Also, I think a little bit of slander is kind of played out within the crypto sphere a little bit. But I think my goals here are to educate specifically on the details of the DAO process that we went through that I think are being combed over. And, Rob, I heard some of your commentary, and I think the devils are in the details there, and I can go over that. And yeah, I think that's my main goal, is just to educate. I think there's, this was kind of an exciting moment within crypto acquisitions, and I'm sure we'll see more of it. And I want to make sure we learn from some of these experiences.
Yeah, man, awesome. I appreciate that perspective. And I think that the really, really cool part about this, before we get into how it all went down, is that, I think traditionally in any sort of merger acquisition deals, it's a very, very long process. It's a very drawn out legal process. This just happened on chain, and this could continue to happen on chain in this fashion. And so, I think that is a very unique part of basically blockchain technology that I think that we can appreciate. So without further ado, Robinson, appreciate your preamble and your preemptive remarks. There's going to be some spicy ones that I throw at you. I'm sure you're ready, but let's give you the floor for just to hear your side of the story. Why did you guys decide to start and make this bid, knowing that the quorum had already, that there had already been voting on Snapshot, that there was already significant reason to believe that LayerZero was going to win this outright? Why did you guys do this? What is your side of the story? How did this play out from your perspective?
Yeah, and Andy, I was listening to you kind of give kind of the tee up to this discussion today, which I think is important to harp on, and I'll do that, and then I'll definitely address the question specifically about why we wanted to go in, given that almost quorum was reached, even though quorum is 1% of circulating supply, which is just absolutely absurd. So quick comment there. But I think it's important to understand interop protocols in general and where the value is. And so, for instance, 𝗵𝗶𝗴𝗵 actually had a really good tweet about this. So Wormhole, LayerZero, like any interop protocol, they're messaging protocols, right? But all the value in future revenues, et cetera, if we're being honest, is at the asset layer. Every message one of these interop protocols does is in service of something asset related. And so when we boil it down to that simple concept, and of course I'm making some blanket statements for brevity, the actual asset components or distribution or front ends become so critical to your business. And so what you mentioned, Andy, was, and I guess maybe just taking a further step back, Stargate is to LayerZero what Portal is to Wormhole, right? So it's back when we launched these protocols, we were worried about running an unregulated kind of exchange, if you will. There was kind of, a lot of people made different decisions on spinning out, the actual bridge versus the messaging protocol. We did that. We didn't launch a token. LayerZero did that with Stargate. They did, right? So if you're an investor and you're looking at LayerZero and you're saying, okay, I'm getting the majority of the volume here is coming from Stargate, which token are you going to buy, right? You're going to buy the logical thing is STG, right? You're going to say, well, if LayerZero is literally in service of Stargate, why am I buying Zero when I should invest in STG? And so this is like a fundamental problem. Wormhole actually is ahead in this regard. We already kind of have Portal. It's owned and worked on by our core teams, and it's already going to be in everything app. We're already doing same chain swaps, etc. But LayerZero has had to kind of make and plan this move for some times because they have this bifurcation with their tokens. And so the way in which they decided to do that was what I would kind of call this kind of like DAO attack, right? And so now I'll kind of get into why we decided to do this. So first and foremost, I always look at these little things because they make a big picture, right? When was this tweeted? This was tweeted from main account on a Sunday. I did a quick ask to Grok, how many times has this account, LayerZero account, tweeted on Sunday? And it's like a handful maybe, right? So the first thing we noticed there is like they don't want a lot of people to notice this is going out on a Sunday. And so I said, okay, like this is interesting. $110 million bid hits the DAO. Let's do a little bit of digging here. It's actually a $10 million bid. You actually don't need to do a lot of digging for that, right? The Stargate treasury is like, it goes up and down. You know, the markets are a little bit crazy right now, around $100 million, you know, give or take. It's actually a $10 million bid for Stargate. That's crazy. $10 million for this protocol that so many people use that has all these integrations. So when I looked at that and looked kind of how misleading this was, you know, we were like, this, like STG holders deserve like a fair bidding process here. Not to mention, and I'll shut up here in a second and kind of wrap up, but not to mention we had like Anon accounts emailing us saying, hey, we're being vocal in the Discord. We're being vocal anywhere we can. And we don't feel like this is right. And so I think to you guys' question, you say, why did we feel like we should vote when quorum wasn't hit or you know, it was close, whatnot? For us, the quorum was so low, it didn't even matter. Even the passing vote, I think, was 1% of the circulating supply. So there's a fundamental, this is LayerZero separate, like fundamental problem that can be what decides the acquisition of a multi-million-dollar protocol, that much of a decision-making power. And so I thought it's helpful, maybe I'll just summarize, giving some background to like why this is important from a strategic perspective. And then like what actually was here. It was a $10 million offer, and there was like just under 1% of the actual vote like saying, hey, we're for this, and a lot of people coming to us saying, this is bad, please help.
Introducing Extended exclusively on Starknet, a next-gen perps trading platform live today. With 50+ trading pairs from crypto to TradFi, you get the best experience on-chain today. Deposit in the community vault for attractive returns, EMV compatible, and engage in unified margin, spot trading, lending, and perps trading. Exclusively live at extended.app on Starknet today.
Okay, so that sets the scene, and it also unpacks some of the details here. You also start to highlight some of the problems that are abundant across snapshot votes and across DAO votes. When I think people saw this on the face of it, and they saw, okay, Stargate was kind of born out of LayerZero. It was incubated, and then it sort of rolled out and spun out on its own. And they came, when it came to Wormhole placing this bid, and it almost seemed like some sort of vampire attack, like you were trying to steal it away from LayerZero. What you're saying is that your bid was actually more fair. What would you say to the criticism of, oh, you know, Wormhole's just trying to steal away Stargate and you know, kind of overtake this from LayerZero?
I guess first I would say, like, of course we're going to want to buy Stargate. It was kind of funny at first. Everyone thought it was a marketing play. Like there's actually probably a 24, 48-hour period before we actually put in kind of like it was actually a response to their proposal. We never put in a formal like DAO proposal, but when we put in that response that had that $120 million, we had the money on chain. It's actually about a 48-hour period where people actually just thought it was a marketing stunt, which was interesting to me. And it's like very much so like how misinformation spreads. Like, why wouldn't I remember the mental model I said, right? Portal, Wormhole, Stargate, LayerZero.
Right.
If we can get another distribution front end for Wormhole, that is insanely valuable. Like, why wouldn't we want to do that? We actually had investors calling us like, this is a great opportunity, blah, blah, blah. And so like, yes, you could say we were stealing it away, but stealing it away to make it successful, like from our perspective, right? So like, I guess the one thing I would dispel is that this was at all a marketing stunt. And for us, beyond that, we also wanted just a fair process for the Stargate, for SDG holders, right? Like there was like a small window to have this go through. Stargate, honestly, if it was two things, if it was anonymous voters, and I can get into why anonymous voters would have mattered, and there was more time, I think Stargate could have gone for, you know, the numbers we're talking about here was with the treasury, like closer to $200 million. We just put in an offer to try and stop the vote. But I think my biggest regret is we should have came in with just a little bit more of a higher offer to really, really shock, you know, the 10 million over. What we just didn't give enough shock for some of these voters that were on the fence to say, hey, you know what? I have these agreements and stuff with LayerZero. I'm okay, you know, foregoing those potentially in order to vote for a better outcome for Stargate.
So you, when you went to put the offer in, you legitimately thought that you had a chance to win. It wasn't just like a, let's try to, you know, stir the pot. That's what
Absolutely. We thought we had, number one, a chance to win. And the reasons I'll back it up again, remember, quorum is such a small, really, like the vote came down to like 2 voters. Like that's really what it came down to. Like that is such a small amount to overcome for something so big. So of course we felt like we had an opportunity to win. And I think, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, finish.
I was just going to say, the thing I want, like the other thing I want people to know is like, this was a proposal for LayerZero to buy Stargate, and with a clock ticking, right? All we were trying to do is say, hey, here's money on chain. We're putting our money where our mouth is. We want this to go to a no. So then we can go to a real process where multiple bidders can come in, bid up the price, and have it what's best for the actual DAO and protocol. For instance, Axelar came in at the last minute. You know, Heart from Across came in at the last minute. Like all these, when you actually look at the number, you know, 120 million is maybe like, oh, only a LayerZero wormhole could afford that. When you look at the net value, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, what it actually could have gone up to, it's not that expensive for the protocol. And so we really just wanted to get that to a no vote so we could go to a fair bidding process.
And would you say that you had reason to believe that, or any speculative belief that the voters who voted to essentially accept this proposal from LayerZero are also key stakeholders of LayerZero itself?
I think this is where things get a little bit like, I'll go back to my first goal at the beginning, which is like, I really don't want to necessarily slander the competition. Space is big, and I think we've got plenty of opportunity. But look, what I will say, and this is probably just DAO governance as a whole, maybe I can frame it like that. There are a lot of commingled interests, right? Like if you think about the stakeholders that are holding a lot of these tokens, and you think about the history of LayerZero and Stargate since the beginning, right? Like there are going to be tied interests together, especially the big token holders, the ones that are holding millions, et cetera. Like they're probably building stuff. They're probably big traders. And so what we found, and I actually respect a lot of the STG voters, so I'm not going to name any names, but what we found going through that process was like a lot of these voters really didn't want to vote or didn't want to vote no, because they were worried about repercussions with relationships. And, you know, that could be like just a standard voting thing we have to get over. But I found that was just a little bit disappointing, because it was almost like this unethical process where we have what's best for Stargate and STG holders is a bidding process where the highest number wins. But at the same time, these individuals have these really like intertwined interests, whether it's businesses they run on the side, et cetera, that like, you know, make it so that it's kind of nerve-wracking to actually vote, because you don't want to ruffle any feathers. And so that's kind of what we were bumping up into at kind of the final hour here, and ultimately, which is what led to kind of the outcome that we see now.
Yeah. So if you were to be able to go back and do it again, seeing as the result kind of, it feels like maybe the punch wasn't strong enough to really shake up the Stargate voters for the reasons that you just described, right? Conflict of interest and just kind of fear, et cetera, or just basically what they think is best. You know, is that the only thing that you would change? Like either the situation, you know, what's in your control and what's not in your control, perhaps with the quorum and the DAO voting on Snapshot and your actions. Like, is there certain things that you would like to see changed about the mechanism in the future? Like, for example, is the 1% for sure too low, and that, you know, there's a different percent that you believe is approximately more fair? Or is there a process that maybe you would have done differently on the Wormhole side? You know, should something like this happen again? Just things that are in your control, and also just more broadly systemic, you know, mechanics, let's call them.
Yeah.
You know, curious what you'd want to see change in the future.
Yeah, maybe I'll start with us and then I'll go to DAO governance, right? Like, so a lot of people see CT, but what they don't realize with any of these, like, these battles always come up in all protocol categories every now and then, right? Like, it's like 96 hours of straight sprinting. And so like the unfortunate thing was, and I'll give you some context, like, and this isn't Stargate's fault, we didn't even get an NDA signed on the Stargate side, right? How am I going to convince my team or my board to spend anything from $10 to $50 million if I have no due diligence docs on Stargate, right? And so I have to signed, work with a team maybe that's not super willing, work with all these voters in like a 96 whatever hour period. It's like, it's untenable. Like acquisitions should not be done in this time period. So I think baseline, that should change. And when I'm serious, and this wasn't Stargate's fault, right? There's red lines when it comes to something like this. Like most mergers, most acquisitions take 6 months, can take 12 months, right? And of course we want things to go faster because we're in crypto and we want things to go faster, but we have to be reasonable, right? We can't do these things that fast. And so, you know, what I will say is like, number one, it can't really happen in this quick time period. We didn't even get diligence docs. Well, I think we got them at like the final hour, if I'm being like, you know, fully critically honest here. And it's just like, wasn't enough to then turn around and putting a meaningful offer. But I think for us, the other thing I would say I would tactically do different, and where I think we went wrong a little bit, I would have came in with a higher offer. I think from our perspective, we said, all we need to do is beat LayerZero's offer to show that, hey, you have some serious bidders here. And that's also why we put the money on chain. We said, this is USDC. This isn't zero token. There's no conversion risk here. This is USDC. We will straight up, we will do this if you vote no, so we can open up our own proposal. And so I would have just gone higher. I think what I learned after from the voters is that given all their intertwined ties with LayerZero, like they didn't feel like the 10 was enough to say like, okay, this is just such a good deal. I can't leave this on the table, right? So like, I'll take that feedback. We should have gone in higher. We should have kind of, you know, hit heavier there. And then, yeah, I mean, in terms of quorum, look, I've been just like you guys, you travel a lot and I talk to a lot of people. The one thing in the industry right now, and I'll avoid going on a tangent, but I think crypto is going through its practical era, right? We're seeing smaller validator sets. I think Andy, you and I have talked about this, Hyperliquid, Fogo, circles of 20 validator chain, but also like the practicality around DAO governance in general. I've been asking a lot of people I respect, what do you think about DAO governance? What is the future? I haven't heard any bullish sentiments on governance at all. And so I just think running any sort of acquisition like this through a DAO it's kind of predatory, if I'm being honest, because you have such a short window. You can know the voters, you can corner the voters, you can do things in the background and like make your will happen. And yes, I know there was some 4 proposals in the actual forum, but if you go to the Discord, if you go to the forum as well, in the forum, there's not a lot. And if you go to our emails, like it's crazy how many people were against this, but nervous to make their voice known. Because if it did go through, you know, this entity that's acquiring them, it's going to know, they're going to remember who wasn't for them at that time.
Some people did voice their displeasure with the proposal. I'm on the LayerZero discourse, the Stargate discourse, and this thread is insane.
Read us some stuff.
Yeah. So just before I do, to push back, Robinson, I think you're right. If you hadn't come in with a higher proposal, maybe it would have worked. But frankly, I don't know if you could have came in with a proposal high enough based on the intertwined interest that you're describing. So the guy who posted the proposal, in his proposal says, well, for one, he's part of the LayerZero Foundation. And in his retort to the Wormhole proposal on this thread, he says, as someone with a significant amount of STG, Stargate, as the foundation of LayerZero, also with a significant amount of STG, he fully supports this deal, of course, right? Because he's in the foundation. Someone calls him out so I guess he had $44,000 worth of STG. Someone says, oh, you mean as someone with 44,000 STG? Pretty reasonable question. This guy responds, oh no, do you have more? Did I fail your purity test for STG ownership? Allow me to get on a knee and bow to you, oh grand master of STG tokens. This is the guy who made the proposal on behalf of the LayerZero Foundation. And so I think what this indicates is that, I mean, look, if someone's going to have that kind of language to me or my community and make a bid to buy my company, I'm giving him the middle. I'm like, dude, fuck you. Like, you're going to talk to me and then try to buy my company like that? Get out of here. And so there was no way that LayerZero was going to lose this bid.
Yeah, no, after going through the whole process, like maybe that's another thing is even if we came in, let's say at 150 all in, including a treasury, so call it net 50, I don't know that if you actually look, as soon as we place the bid, so you can only vote if you have staked STG. As soon as we placed the bid, a bunch more tokens staked. So like they were prepping for the outcome where we could potentially get to a no. There was really only 2 or 3 voters that needed to flip. They actually didn't even vote. They just had such big holdings and were staking. They only needed to flip. But they were prepping for a no vote. If it went no vote, then they're like, okay, like we're gonna load up and stake a lot more STG and figure out like, what back channel we could do that. So it was absolutely a massive uphill battle for us. But that doesn't mean that our intentions were pure. But I do agree that it would have been hard no matter what. And again, and LayerZero doesn't really want these details to come out that much. I'll give you an example. I was supposed to go on the Boys Club stream this morning, and I actually love the Boys Club team. This is no flack to them whatsoever. I think they were in a difficult spot. But there was like Brian was on there, and I was going to go after him, and it was kind of like, hey, we can't have you anymore. It was announced on Twitter, and it pulled me off. So it's like, if someone doesn't want these details out there, it should be, again, like kind of the alarm signal should go off a little bit. And again, I'm not saying anything malicious was necessarily done, but like I think we should just be honest about this process, and it's seemingly a little bit unethical, is from our perspective.
Robinson, I do have to ask, from the thought process of both LayerZero and Wormhole, acquiring Stargate would have also meant acquiring the STG token, the ticker, the handle, the contract address, the ownership of that. And thus you would have ended up having a Wormhole token, which crypto Twitter recently destroyed you on, saying that you should be using your 100 million to buy back the token rather than trying to go and fight LayerZero. You would have had this STG token, this W token. You would have had to figure out a way to maybe merge these things. I'm not sure what LayerZero is planning to do there, how they plan to merge these together. You would have had a sticky process of like transferring the value somehow. Like, had you won this, and speaking to your token holders here, what would you have actually done to make this a win for Wormhole token holders?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that one of the best things for a token is obviously revenue, buybacks. A lot of people agree with that at this point. But if you go further down the stack, then what do you need in order to get that? Front ends, stickiness, users, right? And so front ends are actually at the asset level, and this is why I'm talking about, and this is why I started with the general idea that interop is messaging. Messaging is largely commoditized, where the value accrues as asset and front ends. And so for us, front ends are really important. Portals extremely important because that's ultimately where we're going to collect fees. It's no like silver bullet here. It's very similar to a DEX, if you will, right? Collect fees, and then ideally, if your front end's really sticky and you get a lot of revenue, that goes back to the token, right? And so when we think about the acquisition of Stargate from our perspective, that's just another fee generation for when we turn on the revenue buybacks. And so that it's like as simple as that. In terms of how we would convert 0 to W, we would have done whatever the 1-to-1 conversion is there. And, once we got to our proposal, we would have put that out there. But I think the bigger point here is that front ends are good for revenue. And so, when you think about interop in general, a lot of us are realizing, we realized this a long time ago, again, messaging commoditized, assets are everything, front ends, are an extension of that. And that's where you're going to charge fees. And that's what's going to drive value back to the token. So I guess that'd be the context I'd give there.
And would you then have had to like deprecate the Stargate token, and then like there'd be some sort of destruction of value is what I'm trying to get at. Like I don't see how it would be a win for any like there would be a destruction of the Stargate token's value that it currently has, which I'm not really sure where it's trading now, but like I just think that'd be a bit of a headache. I don't know. I mean,
even in the like zero, even in the zero Stargate deal, right? Like one of the things why we proposed the USDC is because there's no conversion risk. So like you're absolutely right. Like converting from the one token to another, since LayerZero's offer was going to be in zero, like you have a bunch of conversion risk and slippage that you have to take into consideration. We thought by putting up like a flat out USDC, here's the money for it deal, that would have been, perceived as better, right? So like, of course, there's going to be issues when you actually convert over, and there's going to be dilution, but those are things that we could have, figured out if we had time to go through a governance process, collect feedback from the SDG holders, et cetera.
There's always TWAPs and ways to try to average that out. Robinson, I'm curious. This kind of begs the question about the balance of power between foundations and lab companies. And so, obviously the LayerZero Foundation made this proposal to Stargate. You're kind of, I'm actually not sure if you're on the foundation side or the lab side. So maybe you can clarify, like, where should these proposals come from? What is the division of responsibilities when it comes to these foundations and these labs companies? And just generally, if you were to see, this M&A process play out again, how should this shake out in terms of the foundations, the labs? Is this just a song and dance because America had, some pretty significant regulations, or generally what is the purpose of this division?
I think it's a song and dance. I think split entities is one of the worst things to happen to crypto since inception. When is it better or more optimal to have a company with a single goal split into multiple different entities? Like, it's hard for me to see an argument where that makes sense, right? You have split decision making. You have people that are in different areas, maybe run on different missions. They have all the way down to the systems they're on, right? You could have different EOR systems, like different payroll systems, right? It's just like multiples of more overhead to have these different entities. So, I this would actually probably be a fun debate to have, but like, I think that it's one of the worst things to happen. And so one thing that I'm actually looking at closely is, what does it look like for all these entities to consolidate? So beyond like the kind of the LayerZero situation here, like one thing that I think is interesting is people talk about like digital asset treasuries. And I know that's not the point of this conversation, but one of the ways I think that you can sustain a trade above the NAV is actually, what does it look like for these companies to say, hey, we had to split out, but now that there's kind of more regulatory clarity, what does it look like for us to consolidate potentially? And I know some are talking about that. So, I think it just is a song and dance. It's always trading back and forth between the entities. It makes things much more confusing, obfuscated. And so I generally am pretty against it, right? And I don't blame anyone, including us. We were, played the hand we were dealt, if you will, but it definitely makes DAO processes like this much more hard, acquisitions like this much harder. And, I'm looking forward to potentially a world where a lot of the consolidation happens around these entities.
Yeah. Robinson, one last one before we let you get off and a final word for you. So I put that tweet out this morning, and your favorite person in the world, 𝗯𝗏 responded again, asking about exclusivity agreements, paying securitize, coincidental history. I mean, do you have a word for this guy? Like, is there any thoughts on like just this Chainlink, Wormhole, LayerZero battle? It's like the three titans. I mean, I'm not trying to have you stir the pot too much here, but like someone's got to say a word to Chainlink God. He's just firing in the comments right now.
I'll address it. But the first thing I'll say is like, one thing that's exciting for all three parties is like the opportunity side. Like, as consolidation happens, this is something I did predict. Like, I think interop continues to consolidate. I don't think there's one winner. There's multiple. But like, look at all these chains: Stripe, Google Cloud, Circle, more and more chains. JP Morgan just means like the opportunity size for interop is bigger, but it's not going to be a lot of winners, right? So like the battle is just heating up because of that, right? It's like there's a lot of chains, so the hate is kind of spread across all these chains. For interop, is just consolidating, so it's getting more and more fierce, which is, I think, personally, I'm competitive, so I think it's kind of fun. But look, here's what I'll say. Chainlink God is just, fishing for reactions. This entire industry, and I think any like person that really works in it, it runs on BD deals, right? So I'm not saying anything about securitize. I'm saying in general, I don't understand the hill people are dying on. And I think there was actually a lot of people that were originally commenting on this thread being like, how many chain foundations, how many dApps, how many infrastructure protocols do a token swap, do a milestone-based grant, except that's literally what foundations are for. Like, so I just don't even get the like FUD attempt here because it's completely moot. Like, show me someone who hasn't made some sort of grant with a token they have or milestone-based agreement, and then I'll like have a different answer. But like, it's just a nothing burger. Like, he's just farming, and the competition is fierce, and I don't expect anything less from CLG.
Yep. Robinson, one last word for you on this saga here. Just any closing thoughts, reflections, and then we'll let you go, man. I know you're busy.
No, I appreciate you guys having me on. I like, one last thing I'll say is our intentions were pretty clear, and I want to make them clear here. Is like this: we had fully intended, for reasons I said, to acquire Stargate and do what's best for SDG holders. Our firm belief that a fair bidding process and not jamming this through a DAO would have been the best outcome. Axelar across us, just in that short period of time, put in bids to acquire this thing. I think we could have got it almost double what the value that was currently acquired for. That being said, I think crypto's fun because there's always things to learn from and improve upon. And DAO governance needs to be improved upon. I think acquisitions full stop via DAO governance shouldn't happen. And, you know, I will be more vocal about this going forward on my end, and can hopefully contribute to the conversation on how we can make them better.
Certainly.
That's Robinson from
solid.
Wormhole. Quite the saga. Thank you for joining us, man. I appreciate you answering the pointed questions. I'm starting to take the role of asking the tough questions and seeing who's got the skin to take it. So
𝗵𝗶𝗶𝗵 over here. Shout out to 𝗵𝗶𝗶𝗵. We got Andy coming for you.
yeah.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Alrighty,
Thank you, Robinson. We'll see you next time.
Bye.